All right. Hello, everyone. You hear me? Can you hear me okay, Eleanor? Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I know people are filtering in. Peter, the founder here at Brassbound. Thanks for being here today. I am recovering from the stomach flu. I tried to take the easy way out and say, Eleanor, can we push it? And she said, no, you have to, absolutely have to do it. So thanks for being here. Thanks for having a little bit of patience with me. Recovering here. But a lot of people were really excited, and I think that's why Eleanor pushed me to make sure I did the session. Um, so yeah, this session it's all about incorporating more psychology, thinking like a human into our marketing. Stop guessing, stop over explaining, and really start connecting with people by using psychology to shape your brand, your website, and your ads. Um, and the belief here is if you're not using psychology in your branding and marketing, it's not going to perform, especially in 2025 with social media and all the distractions we have and all the other marketing that we're competing against. So while people are filtering in, I'll introduce myself. Um, like I said, I'm Peter Anania, the founder here at Brassbound. I got my start in private equity, and I would work on the branding, marketing, and digital strategy for the firms that were acquired by the private equity company. Basically, bootstrap these marketing strategies and oversee the implementation. Was very rewarding start to the career. Saw many of those companies go public. Wanted to branch out on my own, started my own advertising agency. This is our 10th year, which is great. And it's just been a fun journey, and I'm really into direct response advertising, and this topic speaks directly to it. A little bit about Brassbound. We're a branding and advertising agency based out of Greater Portland. We have a couple verticals we work with, but Eleanor and I find we get a little bored if we're only specializing in one vertical. So we work with a lot of brands locally, a lot of brands in Philly, and we have some verticals that we focus in as well. So you've heard me mention Eleanor. She's on the webinar. I'm gonna ask Eleanor if people have questions. I don't have my big computer screen today. I'm actually from my home office. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please send them to Eleanor. And Eleanor, I think you're gonna tell me at the end. We'll go through any questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Um, Eleanor's background, she's our account manager, project manager. She's the squeaky wheel to get projects moving along. Started at Apple, and has worked at some of the larger agencies in Philly. So we love having her on the Brassbound team. So this webinar, it's not necessarily a technical one. We're not going to be talking about HTML and CSS and PHP and JavaScript. It's really about human behavior. So it's a nice break from some of the more technical webinars. Um, and so I guess with that in mind, let's take a look at what we're going to be covering here. Whoops, sorry about that. Um, so what we're going to cover is first, we're going to talk about why psychology matters now more than ever, especially in 2025. What the old school advertisers knew that some of us digital teams have forgot. We've gotten overwhelmed with worrying about technology, and we've lost some of these tried and true methods. How to build trust and show credibility in seconds versus scrolling multiple times through a website. Um, how to guide behavior by removing mental and design friction. So removing friction from our landing pages, from our websites. Um, and then with this, we want to just give you some practical changes that you can make versus, this takeaways from here being extremely overwhelming and hard to implement. So we're going to give you some actionable takeaways. That's another piece of feedback Eleanor always has for me. We like to start by reframing the challenge. Like, what is the point? What's the point of this webinar? Um, and so why this matters and what the challenge is the biggest barrier to performance today isn't just cost, it's confusion. Um, your audience is, we've talked about this, overwhelmed, distracted, and skeptical. I mean, that rings true in 2025. We all feel overwhelmed. We've got, sometimes we're always on, we're always working, and maybe we have little ones running around, and we have these phones that are constantly distracting us. And we got the culture wars going on out there. We got all sorts of news hitting us all the time. So we can be skeptical. We've learned to become skeptical. So today, if you don't make a strong first impression, you know, your audience can be gone before you even know it. And I just put down kind of what human behavior actually looks like. Um, and so as humans in 2025, we're not reading in depth. We don't like to wait. We don't trust by default. And we don't engage unless we feel there's some reciprocity. Unless we feel seen, we don't engage. Um, and I had some data I pulled together, some that Eleanor pulled together. The first two are from Google. And so here's a data point. 55% of users spend less than 15 seconds on a website. 53% of mobile users leave if a site takes more than 3 seconds to load. So, as our websites become more design heavy, it takes longer to load. Well, we're going to talk about friction and having your website load fast. It's very crucial. And we're talking about some of the psychology behind that. 88% of people won't return to a website after having a bad experience with it. And 75% of users judge credibility of a brand based on the visual design of their website alone. That statistic is from Stanford. So what happens when we miss and we don't incorporate some of the things we're going to talk about today? Your brand, it becomes invisible. Or your ad campaign, your site becomes a bottleneck for the mission that your company's trying to carry out. Or you've worked so hard and set aside this ad budget and you've just wasted it because it's not performing. Maybe it looks pretty, but it doesn't have the principles we're going to be talking about to make it actually perform. So that's the challenge here. And I think now that we understand what's at stake, we can see what Eleanor and I kind of see when clients come to us. And why I have this slide at all is most brands and websites that come to us, they're not necessarily broken. They're sometimes just built for the wrong audience. And practicing for this webinar, I thought of, when I think of this, I think of like, you see a lot of firms that maybe have an engineering background. Well, their website was built for engineers. It speaks to engineers, but their audience might not be engineers. It might be facility managers. It might be more lay people that buy the product made by the engineer. So, writing or building an audience or building a website for the wrong audience. And again, that's really building for internal alignment at the organization, but not for the actual clarity of the user. So we also see websites that are very polished. They look great. They have great visual hierarchy, but they don't actually convert because they're not using some of the principles we're going to be talking about. Or maybe the messaging is too vague. or self-centered, more, from the company standpoint, why, speaking about the company versus benefits for the users. Oftentimes we see websites that are too busy, too many calls to action. Maybe that's a restaurant that, when you go to the Jumbotron on the homepage, it's got 4 different buttons when really what we want you to do is to reserve a table. Um, and then, again, sites that are structured around internal departments instead of the user's journey, back to that engineering department. We built a website because we interviewed our engineers and this is what they thought should be on the website versus going from a user state of mind first. So two data points I pulled here, both from e-consultancy. And the first one is 22% of businesses are only 22% of businesses are actually satisfied with their conversion rates. And 70% of small business websites have no clear call to action. 70% of small businesses having no clear call to action. We see this all the time. We got a good looking website, but the user journey wasn't thought about. And we're going to definitely go up through that. So, these issues, they start with structure and copy, but they're rooting in something deeper, and that's how people actually make decisions. So let's talk about how people make decisions, jump into human behavior. So I have this quote here from David Ogilvy, who is known as the founder of advertising, and he's a pioneer in direct response advertising, which is something I geek out about. And his quote here is that people buy with emotion and they justify with logic. Eleanor, I don't know if that rings true to you. It certainly does for me. And I thought of an example in my life where I did this. So just when I graduated college, I went out and I bought a big fancy road bike, and I needed to go to the bike shop, and they had some special credit program that I used, and it maybe was a little predatory credit program, and it was an emotional buy. I got back into road biking. I really wanted this bike, but I justified that with logic. Well, I'll save money by biking to work. And this is exactly how we buy things, whether it's the newest gadget, or if it's a service that we need. We buy with emotion and then we justify with logic, just like I did with that road bike. Because in reality, could I have done the same thing with something much less expensive? Yes. But I was emotionally bought in, and I justified that with logic. So why does this matter? Because what we see and what Eleanor and I see definitely locally, for those companies that don't have the really savvy chief marketing officer, is that most brands, they lead with logic, features, pricing, processes, but that's not how people actually make decisions. Your audience needs to feel first, and then they're going to back it up with reasoning. So if your message doesn't feel right, it's not going to land no matter how well it's written. So what emotions drive action? The first is relief, and that is, this will finally solve my problem. The second is fear of loss, and that's if I wait, I will fall behind. The third is belonging. This feels made for someone like me. The fourth is hope. This could work. And we also have status pride. This makes me look smart or credible. I just talked about fear of loss, and I wanted to go over loss aversion. And loss aversion, it's a psychological bias where people are motivated to avoid a loss over pursuing a gain. And that's why, don't fall behind often outperforms get ahead. Our brains are wired to gravitate more towards the negative than the positive. And it makes sense from an evolutionary psychology perspective, because over time we had to, it's obviously very good to out in the wild to avoid negative situations. So we when there's something negative, our mind is wired to go towards it. Um, so framing your message around what's at risk versus not just what's at possible can be a very powerful tool. And with all these things we're going to talk about, we're a branding agency, so we're always going to be taking these tactics I'm talking about and kind of merging them with making sure it fits in within our brand voice. So some data points I got around this from this one's from Harvard Business School. So 95% of purchasing decisions happen subconsciously. Now think back to that bike. I subconsciously made that decision I was going to buy it, and then I justified it with logic. Um, Another one with loss aversion, people are 2 times more motivated by a loss than a gain. And that's just how our brains are wired. So I asked Eleanor to come up with a couple of examples, one of a logic-based ad, and then one of an emotion, rewritten with more of an emotional base. And for the logic-based ad, she wrote for the headline, "We help nonprofits improve efficiency." Sounds a little vague there, but if we add some emotion in it, she rewrote it as, "Too many plates spinning. We help nonprofits breathe again." So you just see how much more rewriting with emotion works. And that emotion there is relief or hope, hope of solving a major problem. So we always say, our team, when we're building doing copywriting for a website or an ad, what what do they feel before they act? What does the target audience feel before they act? And just something you can do is just work on rewriting one headline on your homepage or one page of your site. So rewrite the headline to be more emotional, and then back it up maybe with some body copy that's more logical. So emotion really plays into headlines as well, but we wanted to touch on headlines quickly. And um, you know, I have right here, your headline is your first impression and often your only shot. So 80% of us read headlines and only 20% read the body copy. I'm sure this relates with how you read websites. We've changed. We're skimming when we read websites. Now there are 1/5 of the population that's going to read the body, but we're scanning for the headline that kind of grabs us, and then we're going to go in. It grabs us with emotion, and then we're going to go in and read sort of the logic in the body paragraph. So what makes a great headline, and I hate to say this as a branding agency, is sometimes clever isn't always the best. Be benefit driven. You want to lead with emotion. You want to lead with what the outcome is, or you want to lead with what the pain the user or target audience has. And you can use things like urgency and curiosity, but only when it's really an honest take. So something you're going to hear me say again when we're talking about implementation and tactics you can use immediately is, we're always asking ourselves, would I click on this ad if I saw it cold? Or if I was visiting this website cold, what would be my first impression? And you can also test multiple versions depending on how large your ad campaign is. So with headlines and talking about emotion in place, let's talk about reducing distraction. So why this matters, people generally, we have too many options, and we have too many options, we freeze. Like I said, we all have our phones buzzing. You might have little ones running around. We have work stuff, life stuff going on. So when we have a lot of stuff going on, we're distracted, and if we have too many options, we freeze. So a good general rule, whether it's a website page or an advertising funnel, is to have one for every page have one real goal in mind, and that's going to lead to some of the best conversion. Um, and so one stat from HubSpot here is choice paralysis, and that's really what we're talking about here, leads to 70% higher abandonment. So having too many choices leads to 70% higher abandonment, and that comes from HubSpot. So what does this look like when it's not working? And I think I touched on this on a couple slides earlier. It might be pages with 4 to 5 calls to action. Maybe it's that restaurant I said that has menu, on the Jumbotron, about us, menu, reservations, contact us, all as buttons on the Jumbotron. Um, and again, maybe it's like a homepage that's got newsletter signups, demo requests, contact forms all at once. We really want to simplify. And not just with our websites, but I would also argue with our messaging as well. So to fix this, I want you to think about having one call to action per page and think about the user experience as the user is going through your website. Each section needs to guide them to the next step. And write your call to actions. Let's not have it be logic based or just simple buttons. Let's think about, more action oriented phrasing when we're drafting the copy for our buttons. And then I guess just for actionable takeaways, what we suggest people do is audit their homepage or their most visited page. Does it have one clear goal? And is the call to action clear and is it obvious? Um, and I do, before we move on, want to just talk a little bit more about not just one offer, one action, but removing friction. And so for removing friction, where do we see friction on websites? We see it. You might have a long form. You might have a slow mobile experience. Maybe it takes a very long time to load. Or you might have a lot of clutter. So not just having one offer, one action, but having less friction on your website. And that might be less steps to get to your offer. That might be less steps to get to your shopping cart and to checking out. Amazon famously has the one-click shopping that they even patented. And the reason why is because it works. So removing steps, removing friction. And the some stats I hear here for removing friction are 53% of mobile users bounce after 3 seconds. That's from Google. So I just wanted to also share a little bit about friction. I had a separate slide, but it really felt like it fit in under the one offer, one action. So proof over promise. We can make promises, but we can make claims, but are they real? So in the world of marketing, trust, it's certainly earned with proof, not claims. People are skeptical. We said that early on. Some supporting data here. Testimonials can increase conversions by 34%. And these are by eMarketer. Customer reviews are 12 times more trusted than company messaging. So having a review there is trusted 12 more times than just having a promise or a message there, a claim. And what counts as proof? Testimonials, stats, results, logos of recognizable clients, awards, media features, and endorsements from experts. We had a question come up about testimonials before this, where to place it. And generally, you want to do it right above what your call to action is. That's where you want to have your testimonial. Don't bury it in a separate testimonial page. Incorporate it into the most important pages on your website. So, proof, social proof, it's just the psychology of it is, we've evolved to be tribal. In the modern era, we've become skeptical. And these two things together make us seek out feedback from our peers and hold it higher than promises from organizations we might not know as much. Um, so next, just to talk about um, this slide, which I love the title, "The Brain Wants Help, Not Hype." And I think part of the behavior here is, and we talked about this a little bit our last webinar, Winning with WordPress, is our brains are kind of a little lazy. It makes sense. Computing in our brain is costly. It takes a lot of energy. So if there's a shortcut, we're going to do it. And a part of that is we want websites, we want ads to be digestible. We want to be able to just quickly glance at them and make sense. So some of my notes here are people want to feel confident when they visit your website. They don't want to feel confused. So they want to know how to navigate it. It wants to feel natural. It wants to be what they expect. They want to feel that the website was made with them in mind. Again, going back to that engineer, if you have engineers that are making your product, but your target audience isn't engineers, having a website for engineers, it's going to be a disconnect if your audience is not that. If your audience is more of a layperson. So your audience wants to feel that your site was built with them in mind. And Google says, and I think we said this on our Winning with WordPress webinar, I think this is where I got this, it takes 5 milliseconds to form a first impression when landing on a website. That's just, our brains are wired this way, just like we're wired to, just like loss aversion, we're wired to seek out the negative. We put more emphasis on that than the positive. And then one study for Stanford says 46% of users judge credibility based on the website design alone. So what do we want to focus on? We want to focus on the visual hierarchy, clear headlines, short copy, obvious buttons, intuitive design. We want to speak in a language that, speaks to our audience. That might be plain spoken, or if it's a more technical audience, it might have to have some industry jargon. And we want our layouts to be intuitive and consistent across the pages of our website. So, one takeaway you can do, and we've certainly done this here at Brassbound, is when you get your first staging site from your agency, go through it yourself, but maybe also have a couple other people go through it and get some feedback from them. Did they find the layout intuitive, and did it help them take the next step confidently, or did they find it confusing? So, all right, Eleanor asked me to keep this to half an hour, and I'm getting close here. I will be a little bit over, because I know she'd messaged me. We had a couple questions. So just bringing this forward, because we wanted to throw a lot at you and get you thinking so you can maybe incorporate some of these, but then go out, research more, and bring some more of these psychology principles into your marketing, your branding, and your website. So what can you do in your own brand? I think you can start, leading with emotion, thinking about more about your personas that you serve, your audience. And certainly something that we always do is replace the we language with the you language. So we is us as a company, replace that with you speaking to your target audience, your client, your customer. So that was with your brand. Now with your website, think about going through your website. Make sure you have one purpose per page. Repeat those call to actions. Don't just have them once. Have them, that one call to action, have it multiple times. Is there distractions? Go back to that restaurant example. do we have too many buttons in the Jumbotron when we really just want them to reserve a table? And then cut out distractions, one offer, one offer, one page. Um, and um, so in advertising, again, I said this is something we say a lot. Would I click on this if I saw it cold? So what does cold mean? Someone who, has never been familiar with your brand at all. If they just saw this ad, would they click on it? We think of advertising in terms of cold and warm. And generally, you want different ads for your cold versus your warm audience. Warm audiences are people who have engaged with your ads. Cold is people who don't know. So if you didn't know your brand, didn't know your product, you saw the advertising cold, would you click on it? Um, and then, use the scarcity, the social proof we talked about, and clarity over cleverness. It saddens me as a branding agency. Always there should be some cleverness in there, but it needs to take a little bit of a backseat to some of the other principles that we talked about. Um, Eleanor, do you have maybe that's a good spot to take a break and see if any
Yeah.
questions come in or if you have anything to add?
Yeah. We actually got two questions. And I am ready to fire them off if you are ready to answer them.
All right, fire away.
Cool. So this is from Emily, and she asked, "How does Brassbound decide what emotion to lead with for clients?"
Ooh, that's a good question. That's even a good question for you.
Yeah.
What I would say, um, when we're doing a rebrand, we're gonna figure out what the brand voice is. And I think you need to take a look at what your brand voice is and what the problem that your audience faces. And you need to put them together in a way that's appropriate. Um, so you might have a brand you might be able to get away with more. Like when we did our brand, our brand is a little bold, and you can see that on our website. So with some of the messaging, so when we can play with emotion much more boldly than someone who might have to offer relief because they're going to tie into hope and relief as emotions because their brand voice is a little bit more subdued. So I think it starts with um, building your brand voice and then looking at what your audience's problems are, and just using the emotion that it connects those two together in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think just when you said, answering your customer or clients' questions. So if somebody is always coming to you, or if a certain type of, client is always coming to you, and they all kind of have one need that may be, an industry, standard for why people come to, you or competitors for, your service. And I think understanding that is really helpful. So understanding exactly what your clients need and then being able to speak to that in emotion, as well as services and, um, you know, technical ability of your work. I think that really answers a lot of those questions for you.
I agree. What
Cool.
was that last one?
So the next one is there a marketing automation tool that helps some of those tactics? And that is from Chris.
Oh, Chris. Okay. I think there's a lot of marketing automation communities. You can go on Facebook. There's a lot of pages you can join that will, I think, help with some of these tactics. The major platforms out there are going to help you implement this for sure. But I mean, they're not going to help you unless they have AI integration, and you're still going to want to, make edits to that. They're not going to help you with necessarily copy, but they can definitely, they definitely should have tools in place to, help you remove friction, help you have social proof. Yeah, we said proof over promise. Um, Load fast, one offer, one page. There's tools, these are the things that the tools are going to help you do. Now, we use a tool called High Level. Um, I said that I'm a direct response advertising geek. I'm kind of a techie, so Go High Level, you got to be a little bit of a techie. You have to set up your own, integrate it with email. There's a lot of techie stuff you have to do. So if you're techie, I recommend that as a good one. Um, some of our clients that are a little bigger, they're going to use HubSpot. HubSpot's great. It's a little bit more user friendly, um, but it can be more pricey. Um, and then you have your sales forces, those sorts of. And if anyone has any other ones that I'm blanking on right now, put in the chat. But those are definitely the ones I hear more often. I think one of our supporting data was from Unbounce, so I think they have a platform that's pretty good as well. And you can also, when we build a WordPress website, we can build a landing page template that removes the distraction, removes the header, all those sorts of things. So sometimes you can, if you want to do it simple, you can start with your website and just something as simple as a MailChimp account as a start. Eleanor and I say crawl, walk, run a lot. So sometimes it's easy to start with something small, like let's just use our website and one tool. Then after we get that down, go to our marketing automation tool. But
Yeah.
uh, I've also, one of the ones that I've heard is Infusionsoft. I don't know. These companies keep getting bought and sold. It's really hard to keep track of them, but we've been with Go High Level for a long time.
Yeah.
Is that it? Any more?
That's it.
Um, Well, thank you guys. I think we're gonna have another webinar next month. We're gonna dig into cold versus warm advertising campaigns. I think I have to just check with the team. Thanks for being a little bit patient with me today. I'm coming back from the stomach flu. I know Eleanor, you had it like 2 months ago. It ran through the whole family here. All five of us got it.
Yeah.
Uh, so a little slow today, but
Yeah.
Eleanor forced me to not cancel. No, thank you for that, Eleanor.
Yeah.
Follow us on, we're going to be sending the replay around. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you have any projects coming up, feel free to shoot me an email, Peter at Brassbound, also Eleanor at Brassbound. There's my phone number. We'd love to connect with all of you. And thanks for joining us again. We like to keep these to about 30 minutes. We just try to keep them something light for a Wednesday lunch. So thank you all very much, unless I'm missing anything, Eleanor.
I don't think so. I think we're good to go.
All right. Thank you all. And